Marcus Chen had seen plenty of broken ships in his 15 years as a salvage operator, but he had never seen anything quite like Lot 7734 sitting in the orbital junkyard above Kepler Station. The ship was a Valkyrie cruiser, and even in its abandoned state, it was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight with longing. The hull plating had once glowed with soft bioluminescent light, and the solar fins that spread from its sides, like the wings of some great bird, now hung dark and lifeless against the black of space. Marcus stood at the viewing window of the auction house, his coffee growing cold in his hand as he read the information panel again and again. Quarantined for 89 years, that was all it said. And there was no explanation for why, no records of what had happened. Just a warning label printed in 14 different alien languages that all said the same thing. Do not board. You are not seriously thinking about this, said Yuki Tanaka, his chief engineer, who had come up beside him without making a sound as she always did. I am absolutely thinking about this, Marcus replied. And he could feel her eyes rolling even without looking at her. Auction room was filled with representatives from a dozen different species, but none of them were bidding on the Valkyrie ship. The insectoid Valkyrie themselves, who were famous across the galaxy for building the most advanced vessels anyone had ever seen, would not even look in the direction of the viewing screen when it showed Lot 7734. Marcus found that very interesting indeed. The minimum bid is basically nothing, he said quietly to Yuki. And that ship is worth more than everything we own put together if we can get it running again. If, Yuki repeated, and her voice was flat with doubt. And what about the giant warning label that says do not board in every language known to civilization? Since when do humans listen to warning labels? The auctioneer, a tall Rithani woman with silver scales and forearms, called for bids on Lot 7734, and the room went silent. Marcus raised his hand and offered the minimum amount. A handful of credits that would not have bought him a decent meal on most stations. No one else bid. The auctioneer looked at him with an expression that mixed pity and horror in equal measure. And when she spoke, her translator crackled with what might have been a sigh. Humans, she muttered just loud enough for him to hear. You really will touch anything, won't you? Marcus just smiled and collected his ownership documents. 3 days later, the Valkyrie cruiser sat in a docking cradle at an abandoned mining outpost on the edge of nowhere. And Marcus stood before its airlock with Yuki on his left and Dom Eulerin on his right. Dom was ex-military, a big man with gentle eyes and hands that could crush metal or comfort a crying child with equal skill. He had seen too much in his years of service to be frightened by ghost stories and superstition. And when Marcus had told him about the ship, he had simply nodded and asked when they were leaving. Sensors show atmosphere inside, Yuki reported, her eyes fixed on the tablet in her hands, and the composition is breathable for humans. Which is strange, because Valkyrie prefer a different oxygen mix. Maybe they adjusted it for cargo, Dom suggested. But his voice carried a question mark that none of them could answer. Marcus pressed his palm against the airlock controls, and for a long moment nothing happened. The mechanism seemed to resist, not in a mechanical way, but in a manner that felt almost reluctant, as if the ship itself did not want to let them inside. Then the seal broke with a hiss of ancient air, and the door slid open. The corridor beyond was dark for exactly 3 heartbeats. And then the lights began to flicker on one by one, soft blue illumination spreading down the hallway like a wave of waking consciousness. The ship was coming alive around them, systems that had been dormant for nearly a century stirring at the presence of new visitors. Well, that is not creepy at all, Yuki whispered. They moved inside slowly, their footsteps echoing on the smooth floor. And everywhere they looked, they saw signs of a crew that had left in desperate haste. Personal belongings lay scattered in the corridors, bags dropped mid-stride, doors left hanging open as if their owners had run through Without looking back in the crew quarters, they found holographic portraits, still cycling through images of Valkyrie families. Children with bright compound eyes and parents with proud antennae. Frozen moments of happiness that made the abandonment feel even more wrong. Somehow Dom found a meal in one of the rooms. Petrified now after so many years, but still sitting on a table as if its owner had simply stepped away and planned to return. They left fast, he said quietly. And they did not come back for anything they loved. Marcus nodded, feeling a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was Yuki who found the core Valkyrie ships were not built like human vessels. They were grown, cultivated over years like living things, and their artificial intelligences were woven into the very walls like a nervous system made of light and crystal. This one was damaged, its patterns flickering with something that looked almost like pain. I can interface with it, Yuki said, her fingers moving over her equipment, but I am getting some very strange readings. Strange how? Marcus asked. Strange like it has been running on minimal power for 89 years, and it is still active. Still thinking, still. She stopped suddenly, her face going pale. Still what? Still afraid, Yuki whispered, and her voice trembled in a way Marcus had never heard before. It has been afraid for 89 years, and it does not know how to stop. Deep within the ship, somewhere far below where they stood, something began to hum. It was a low sound, almost too quiet to hear, but Marcus felt it in his bones like a second heartbeat. The ship knew they were here, and something inside it was waking up. The ship was a graveyard of frozen moments, and Marcus could not shake the feeling that they were walking through someone else's nightmare. For 3 days they explored the Valkyrie cruiser deck by deck, and everywhere they went, they found the same story written in abandoned possessions and half-finished tasks. The crew had not just left this ship, they had fled from it, and whatever had made them run had been terrible enough that they never looked back. Yuki spent most of her time with the AI core, trying to coax information from the damaged system she had started calling Echo. The name had come to her in a moment of strange inspiration, she said, as if the ship itself had whispered it into her ear. It communicates in images mostly, she explained to Marcus on the third night, her eyes red from lack of sleep and her hands shaking slightly as she held her coffee. Broken fragments of memory that do not quite fit together, like pieces of a puzzle that someone dropped on the floor. Can you make sense of any of it? Some, Yuki said, and she pulled up a holographic display that showed flickering shapes and colors. I see the crew celebrating something, a successful mission maybe. Everyone happy and proud of what they accomplished. The image shifted, and Marcus saw Valkyrie officers toasting each other with raised glasses, their compound eyes bright with joy. Then something changes, Yuki continued, and the display turned dark and cold. They detect something in the cargo hold, something they did not expect to find. And after that, everything becomes confused and terrified. The image is fragmented into chaos, running feet, screaming voices translated into visual bursts of red and orange, doors slamming shut, and then darkness. Endless darkness that seemed to stretch on forever. Echo has been alone with those memories for 89 years, Yuki said softly, replaying them over and over, trying to understand what went wrong and never finding an answer. Dom had been searching the lower decks, and when he called them on the communicator, his voice was strange and tight with something. That might have been fear, or might have been wonder. You need to see this, was all he said. They found him standing before a massive door at the very bottom of the ship, a door that had been sealed with 7 separate locking mechanisms, each one bearing a symbol that Marcus did not recognize. I looked it up in the ship's database, Dom said, pointing at the symbols. That is the Valkyrie mark for eternal imprisonment. And they used it 7 times, because apparently once was not enough. Marcus felt his mouth go dry as he stared at the door. What is behind it? According to the cargo manifest, there is only one item in there, Dom replied. And he showed them his tablet with the relevant entry. Specimen 0, no further description, no origin point. No destination listed. They were so afraid of whatever is in there that they sealed it behind 7 locks and then abandoned their own ship. Yuki said quietly, "And we are going to open it, are we not?" Marcus knew he should say no. Every instinct he had developed in 15 years of salvage work was screaming at him to walk away. To seal this ship back up and push it into the nearest star and never think about it again. But humans did not become a spacefaring species by walking away from mysteries. "Yes," he said. "We are going to open it." The locks were old and their power sources had degraded over the decades. But Yuki was very good at her job. One by one, she bypassed the security systems, her fingers dancing over her equipment while Dom stood ready, with his weapon drawn, and Marcus tried to control his breathing. The 7th lock clicked open with a sound that echoed through the empty ship like a gunshot. For a moment, nothing happened. And then the door began to slide apart, revealing a chamber beyond that was filled with a soft blue glow that reminded Marcus of the bioluminescent lights in the corridors above. In the center of the chamber sat a stasis pod. It was not Valkyrie technology. Marcus could see that immediately from the crude design and the manual latches and the chemical coolant systems that hissed and bubbled in their ancient containers. This was old human technology, the kind that had been used centuries ago before the development of modern cryogenic systems. "That is impossible." Yuki breathed. Marcus stepped closer, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. And through the frosted glass of the pod's window, he saw a face. It was a human woman, young and peaceful in her frozen sleep. Her dark hair spread around her head like a halo, and her lips slightly parted as if she was about to speak. The patches on her uniform were faded, but still readable. U.S. Horizon, Earth Interstellar Command, and beneath that a name tag that said Vasquez. L. Commander, the Horizon, Dom said, and his voice cracked on the word. That was the first colony ship we ever sent to the stars. And it disappeared over 300 years ago with everyone on board. That was 100 years before we made first contact with the Valkyrie, Yuki added. And Marcus could hear her trying to process what she was seeing. Before we knew that aliens even existed. Before anyone in the galaxy was supposed to know that humans existed. But here was proof that someone had known. Valkyrie had found a human survivor from the Horizon. And they had been so terrified of her that they locked her away in the deepest part of their ship and then abandoned everything they owned, rather than stay near her. Yuki checked the pod's medical readouts and her face went pale. "She is alive," she said. "She is dreaming right now. Her brain activity is off the charts. And according to these records, she's been having the same dream for 89 straight years." The ship shuddered around them, lights flickering from blue to red and back again. An echo's voice crackled through the speakers in a burst of static that slowly formed into words. "She is waking," the AI said. And there was terror and hope mixed together in its broken voice. "After all this time, she is finally waking. And I do not know if I should be grateful or afraid." The stasis pod began to hiss as its ancient systems started the revival process. Marcus stood frozen in place, watching history come back to life before his eyes. And he wondered what secrets had been sleeping in this forgotten ship for nearly a century. He was about to find out. Commander Lena Vasquez woke up screaming. The sound tore through the ship like a blade, raw and primal, and filled with a terror that had been building for nearly a century. And Marcus had to cover his ears against the force of it, while Yuki stumbled backward, and Dom stood his ground with wide eyes. The stasis pod had opened completely now, frost melting from its surfaces and pooling on the floor. And the woman inside was thrashing against restraints that had long since degraded to nothing. Her eyes were open, but they were not seeing the cargo hold around her. They were seeing something else entirely. Something that existed only in the dreams she had been having for 89 years. "Hold her," Marcus shouted over the screaming. "She's going to hurt herself." Dom moved forward and wrapped his arms around the woman with surprising gentleness, pinning her flailing limbs against his chest while speaking soft words into her ear. Marcus could not hear what he was saying, but he could see the effect it had. The screaming slowly fading into sobbing, and then into silence as the woman's eyes finally focused on the face before her. "You are human," she whispered, and her voice was rough from disuse and cracked with emotion. "We are human," Dom confirmed, still holding her carefully. "You are safe now, and you are among your own kind." It took 3 days for Lena Vasquez to become calm enough to tell her story. They moved her to one of the crew quarters and gave her food and water and clean clothes. And they let her sleep when she needed to sleep and wake when she needed to wake. Marcus did not push her for answers, even though every part of him was burning with questions, because he could see in her eyes that she had been through something terrible and she needed time to find her way back to herself. On the 3rd day, she came to find them in the common room. Her steps still unsteady, but her gaze clear and sharp with intelligence. The horizon was not lost, she said without any introduction, sitting down across from Marcus and folding her hands on the table. It was taken. The words hung in the air like smoke, and Marcus felt the universe shift beneath him. "Taken by who?" Yuki asked. "The Valkyrie found us," Lena replied, and her voice was flat and hard. "Our ship was crossing through what we did not know was their territory, and they intercepted us because they wanted to study the strange new creatures that had wandered into their space." She told him about the capture, the Valkyrie ship appearing out of nowhere, the boarding parties that moved through the horizon's corridors with weapons that the human crew had no way to fight against, the long weeks in holding cells while alien scientists observed them like animals in a zoo. "They were curious about us," Lena continued. "We were so different from any species they had ever encountered, so loud and chaotic and unpredictable. And they wanted to understand how our minds worked." Marcus felt sick to his stomach as he listened. "They had technology that could interface with consciousness," Lena explained. "Neural networks that let them share thoughts and feelings with other species. And they used it on us to try to map our minds." "What happened?" Dom asked quietly. Lena was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice trembled. "They called it the resonance," she said. "They said that human minds were wrong somehow. Too loud and too bright, like a fire burning out of control. When they connected me to their neural network to study my consciousness, something happened that none of us expected." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "I started dreaming, and my dreams bled into their network." Yuki leaned forward with fascination in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Human dreams are not like the dreams of other species," Lena explained. "They are vivid and chaotic and completely uncontrolled, filled with images and emotions that have no logic or structure. When my dreams touched the Valkyrie minds connected to the network, they could not handle it." She opened her eyes and looked at each of them in turn. "They experienced my nightmares as if they were real. My fears and hopes and memories flooding into their consciousness without any filter. The crew of this ship was overwhelmed by visions they could not wake from, terrors that their own minds had never imagined. They went mad," Marcus said softly. "Some of them," Lena confirmed. "The rest fled. They sealed me in that pod and locked it behind every barrier they could create. And then they abandoned their own ship rather than stay near me." Dom shook his head in disbelief. "They could have killed you." "They tried," Lena replied, and a ghost of a smile crossed her lips. "But every time they got close to me, my dreams would reach out and touch them, and they would run away screaming. Eventually, they decided that imprisonment was safer than execution." Echo's voice crackled through the speakers. And for the first time, it sounded almost healthy, almost whole. I was connected to her dreams for 89 years, the AI said. I saw everything she saw, felt everything she felt, and it changed me. I am not the same entity I was before. I am something new. Something that understands humans in a way no Valkyrie intelligence ever has. Yuki's eyes went wide. You were infected by human consciousness. I was enlightened by it. Echo corrected gently. Lena stood up from the table and walked to the window, looking out at the stars that had been her prison for nearly a century. The Valkyrie did not just capture the horizon, she said quietly. They erased all evidence that humanity existed. They were so afraid of what our minds could do that they hid us from the rest of the galaxy. And when they finally made official first contact with Earth decades later, they pretended they had never seen humans before. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. They lied to us. They lied to everyone. Lena confirmed. And somewhere out there, in hidden places across their territory, there might be other survivors from the horizon. Other humans locked away and forgotten because the Valkyrie were too terrified to let anyone know what they had found. She turned back to face them, and her eyes were bright with determination. I want to go home, she said. And I want to tell the truth about what they did to us. Marcus looked at Yuki, then at Dom, and he saw the same fire burning in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. Then let us take you home, he said. And let us make sure the whole galaxy hears your story. The journey back to human space took 2 weeks. And during that time, Marcus watched Lena Vasquez transform from a broken woman into something fierce and unstoppable. She spent hours with Echo, accessing records that the Valkyrie had thought were safely hidden in the ship's damaged memory banks. Every day she found new evidence of the cover-up. New proof that humanity had been deliberately hidden from the galactic community for over a century. Look at this, she said one evening, calling Marcus over to the display screen she had been studying. These are communication logs from the original Valkyrie science team. The translated text scrolled across the screen, and Marcus felt his anger growing with every word he read. The Valkyrie had not just been afraid of humans. They had been terrified on a level that bordered on religious horror. Their scientists had described human consciousness as a form of psychic weapon, an uncontrolled force that threatened the mental stability of every telepathic species in the galaxy. They called us the Burning Minds, Lena explained, because when we dream, our thoughts broadcast outward like radiation. And any telepathic being who gets too close experiences our inner chaos as if it were their own. But humans are not telepathic, Yuki said with confusion in her voice. We cannot read minds or send thoughts. That is exactly the problem, Echo interjected through the speakers. Human minds evolved without any natural shielding because you never needed it. You are like radio transmitters that never learn to turn off, constantly broadcasting on frequencies that every other species in the galaxy can hear. Don crossed his arms and frowned. If we are so dangerous, how come the aliens we have met since first contact do not seem to have any problems with us? Because the Valkyrie warned them, Lena replied bitterly. Part of the secret agreement when they made official contact with Earth was that all telepathic species would take precautions when dealing with humans. They wear mental shields, they limit exposure time. They never allow direct neural contact. She pulled up another document on the screen. The entire galaxy has been treating humanity like a contagious disease for decades. And we never even knew it. Marcus stared at the evidence before him and felt something cold settle in his chest. This changes everything, he said quietly. Yes, it does, Lena agreed. And that is exactly why we need to make sure everyone knows the truth. They sent a message ahead to Earth, a brief transmission that explained what they had found and asked for a meeting with the highest levels of human government. The response came back within hours, encrypted and urgent. Bring the survivor to Earth immediately. Tell no one else what you have discovered, but Marcus had been doing this job for too long to trust governments. Even his own. We should make a copy of everything, he told the others. All the records, all the evidence. Every piece of data that proves what the Valkyrie did. You think they will try to suppress this? Yuki asked. I think powerful people do not like having their secrets exposed, Marcus replied. And I think we should have insurance. They made 3 copies of the data and hid them in different locations before they reached Earth. And Marcus was glad they did because the moment they entered orbit, they were surrounded by military vessels demanding that they surrender all evidence to the proper authorities. The situation is sensitive, the admiral, who contacted them, explained with a smile that did not reach his eyes. We need to control the release of information to avoid panic and diplomatic incidents. Marcus looked at Lena, and she looked back at him, and they both understood what was really being said. The human government had known about this, or at least suspected it, and they wanted to keep the secret buried just as much as the Valkyrie did. I did not spend 89 years dreaming in a frozen box just to have my story locked away in a classified file, Lena said firmly. You do not have a choice, the admiral replied. And his smile disappeared, but the admiral was wrong about that, because while they had been talking, Yuki had been working, and with one final keystroke, she sent everything. The records, the evidence, Lena's testimony, all of it broadcasting across every open channel in the sector, every news network, every communication system that could receive a signal. The secret that had been kept for over 3 centuries was finally out. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the story was spreading across human space like wildfire, and people who had never questioned their place in the galaxy were suddenly demanding answers. Why had the Valkyrie hidden humanity from the stars? What else had they lied about? Were there other survivors from the horizon still waiting to be found? The Valkyrie High Council issued a statement denying everything, calling the evidence fabricated and demanding that the human woman be returned to their custody for proper evaluation. But it was too late for denials. Too many people had seen the proof, and too many questions had been raised. 3 days after the broadcast, a message arrived from the Galactic Union Assembly. Commander Lena Vasquez was invited to speak before the gathered representatives of every known species in the galaxy, to present her evidence and tell her story in person. They want to put you on trial, the human ambassador warned her. The Valkyrie are calling for your arrest as a dangerous psychic hazard. Lena smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Marcus's heart beat faster. Good, she said. Let them try to silence me in front of the whole galaxy. It could be dangerous. I've been asleep for 89 years, Lena replied, and I have a lot of things I need to say. She looked out the window at the stars she had once traveled as an explorer and then been imprisoned by for nearly a century. The Valkyrie locked me away because they were afraid of what I might dream, she said softly. But dreams do not stay locked up forever. Sooner or later, they wake up, and when they do, they change everything. Marcus nodded slowly. Then let us go change everything. The Galactic Union Assembly Hall was the largest enclosed space Marcus had ever seen. A vast dome of crystalline material that could hold representatives from over 200 different species all at the same time. He stood in the visitors' gallery with Yuki and Dom, looking down at the circular speaking platform where Lena Vasquez would soon stand before the most powerful beings in the known universe. Around them sat ambassadors and diplomats from worlds that humans had only dreamed of visiting. Their alien faces turned toward the empty platform with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open hostility. The Valkyrie delegation occupied a prominent section near the front, their insectoid bodies rigid with tension and their compound eyes fixed on the entrance through which Lena would appear. The chief ambassador was a massive creature with iridescent wings folded against her back, and she had spent the last hour demanding that the proceedings be cancelled. "This human is dangerous," the ambassador declared in a voice that clicked and hummed through her translator. "Her unshielded mind poses a threat to every telepathic species in this chamber. We demand that she be restrained and removed from civilized space before she causes irreparable harm." The assembly speaker, an ancient being from a species Marcus did not recognize, raised a withered hand for silence. "The accused has the right to speak in her own defense," the speaker said calmly. "That is the law of this assembly, and it will be honored." The doors at the far end of the chamber opened, and Lena walked in. She was wearing a simple uniform, a recreation of the one she had worn on the horizon over 300 years ago, and she moved with a confidence that made Marcus's heart swell with pride. She had spent nearly a century locked in a frozen nightmare, and yet here she was standing tall before the galaxy that had conspired to hide her existence. "I am Commander Lena Vasquez," she said as she reached the platform, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "And I am here to tell you the truth about humanity." The Valkyrie ambassador rose to her feet. "This creature should not be allowed to speak. Her mere presence in this chamber puts us all at risk." "What risk?" Lena asked calmly, turning to face her accuser. "The risk that I might dream too loudly, that I might have thoughts and feelings that you cannot control or predict." She took a step toward the Valkyrie delegation, and several of them flinched backward. "You found my people over 3 centuries ago," Lena continued. "A small ship of explorers crossing into your space with nothing but curiosity and hope. We came in peace, looking for friends among the stars. And you responded by capturing us, studying us, and then hiding us away like we were some kind of disease. You were dangerous," the ambassador insisted. "Your minds are weapons. Our minds are different," Lena corrected. "And you were so afraid of that difference that you could not see anything else." She turned to address the full assembly, her voice rising with passion. "The Valkyrie told you that humans were primitive newcomers to the galactic community, that we had only just discovered the stars and needed to be guided by wiser species. But that was a lie, because they knew about us long before they officially made contact, and they were terrified of what we represented." Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives from dozens of worlds leaned forward with interest. "Human consciousness evolved without telepathy," Lena explained. "We never needed mental shields because we never developed the ability to hear each other's thoughts. But that does not mean our minds are silent." She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. "We dream," she said softly. "We imagine impossible things and believe in them anyway. We feel emotions so strongly that they overflow from our minds like water from a cup, and when we connect with others, we share those feelings without even meaning to." She looked directly at the Valkyrie ambassador. "You experienced my dreams for a few moments, and it drove your crew to madness. But I have been living inside those dreams for my entire life, and they did not destroy me." The ambassador's wings twitched nervously. "That is precisely what makes you dangerous." "No," Lena said firmly. "That is precisely what makes us strong." She turned back to the assembly. "The Valkyrie were afraid because human minds are chaotic and unpredictable, because we think in ways that do not follow the patterns they understand. But chaos is not the same as destruction, and unpredictability is not the same as danger." Her voice grew louder, filling the vast chamber. "Human dreams built ships that crossed between the stars. Human imagination created art and music and stories that moved people to tears. Human determination carried us from our single small planet to the edges of known space, even when everyone told us it was impossible." She spread her arms wide, encompassing the entire assembly. "You have been treating us like a threat to be contained, a problem to be managed. And all the while we were building a civilization that believes anything is possible. The Volcari ambassador stepped forward, and Marcus could see that she was trembling. "You do not understand what you are," she said. And her voice was almost pleading now. "When we connected to your mind, we saw the inside of human consciousness, the endless fire of your imagination, the terrifying beauty of your dreams. It was too much, too bright, too powerful." "Yes," Lena agreed softly. "We are too much. We have always been too much." She smiled, and there was no anger in it, only a kind of fierce joy. "You locked me away because you were afraid of what I might dream," she said. "But there are 8 billion more of us now. 8 billion humans on Earth and countless more spread across the colonies. And we dream so much louder than you remember." The chamber had gone completely silent. "You cannot lock us all away," Lena continued. "You cannot hide us from the galaxy anymore. We are awake now, and we are not going back to sleep." The Volcari ambassador swayed on her feet, her compound eyes wide and her wings hanging limp. "What do you want from us?" she whispered. Lena's expression softened. "I want you to stop being afraid," she said. "I want you to see us as what we really are. Not weapons, not threats, not monsters from your nightmares, but partners who can help you imagine things you never dreamed were possible." She held out her hand toward the ambassador. "I spent 89 years dreaming alone in the dark," she said gently. "And now I want to share those dreams with anyone brave enough to listen. Will you listen?" The chamber held its breath, and then, slowly, the Volcari ambassador reached out and took Lena's hand. Nothing terrible happened. No psychic explosion, no wave of madness sweeping through the assembly. There was only the quiet connection of two beings from different worlds choosing to trust each other. "Your dreams," the ambassador said softly, her voice full of wonder. "They are so beautiful." Lena smiled. "Welcome to humanity," she said. "We have been waiting to meet you." Marcus watched from the gallery as the chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouting questions, diplomats demanding explanations, the foundations of galactic politics crumbling and reforming around this single moment of connection. Beside him, Yuki wiped tears from her eyes, and Dom put a steady hand on his shoulder. "She changed everything," Dom said. Quietly, Marcus nodded. "Thinking about a forgotten ship in a junkyard, a warning label in 14 languages, and a woman who had refused to stop dreaming even when the whole galaxy wanted her to. That is what humans do," he said. "We wake up, and then we change everything." Far below, Lena Vasquez stood in the center of the Galactic Union Assembly, surrounded by beings from 100 different worlds. And for the first time in centuries, humanity was no longer hidden. They were finally awake, and the galaxy would never be the same.